what you want, when you want it, where you want it. This is The Mesh.
This podcast is sponsored by Jackson Creative, a custom communication agency located in downtown Hickory, specializing in online content creation. To learn more, visit thejacksoncreative.com. Jackson Creative, we tell your story.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Forecast. I'm your host, Alan Burton, Director of Instruction for the Alan Burton Golf Academy at Lake Hickory Country Club in Hickory, North Carolina. Be sure to check out all our other shows on themesh.tv, all produced here in Western North Carolina. We are your connection to the who's who in the game of golf. We will make you think, make you laugh, and grow your golf IQ. Thanks to all our listeners, and find us on themesh.tv and all your other favorite podcast platforms, such as Apple iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher Radio, iHeartRadio, and Google Play. On today's episode, I am proud and pleased to be joined by a really good friend of mine, a young man that I've known for quite some time, probably very early in his life. I got introduced to him, and fortunately for me, it's been a fantastic ride to watch this young man's career grow. This gentleman is Ben Dietrich, and Ben is currently the assistant golf coach at the University of South Carolina, and been a long time since I've had a chance to sit down and catch up with this young man, so I'm excited about our conversation this morning, and I want to welcome you to the show, Ben. It's a pleasure to have you on, buddy.
Well, thank you so much, Alan. It's certainly a pleasure to be here. Like you said, we have known each other for a long time, and I'm certainly excited to catch up this morning.
Well, you've had an amazing career as a young golfer. I guess I met you at probably 10 or 11 years old. It really speaks to how old I'm getting. And you're from the area here in Hickory. You lived over in Conover, and I think let's go back and tell the Ben Dietrich story a little bit. Let our listeners know where you came from and how you got to where you are, because it's a fascinating story.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, I grew up in Conover, North Carolina, and was introduced to the game of golf, thankfully, around the age of 9, maybe 10. My dad and my brother started playing just as a good avenue to spend time together as a family, and lo and behold, fell in love with the game and decided to find some instruction, and thankfully was placed in your gifted hands. But yeah, it started around the age of 10, started taking golf lessons, and quickly fell in love with the competitive side of it, and just started to grow like crazy, and count your instruction very valuable early on with fundamentals and whatnot. And I felt like that really gave me a solid foundation to move forward. So, after the age of 10, 11, 12, started to get into the really competitive side and play a lot of junior golf, and really began to fall in love with just the competition, the game, the tournament side of things. And it was a joy to compete. And so, continued to play throughout middle school, and was given the opportunity to move to Hilton Head Island, South Carolina, to pursue it a little bit further within a golf academy. It was a good jump. It was certainly hard to leave home. For me at that age, that was around probably 14 or 15. But I think what it did is it opened my eyes to further competition, and then it also allowed me to move to South Carolina. Just some great golf courses down in that area. As you know, we've played a few rounds down in that area, which has always been fun in the past. But really took root in the competitive side of it. Started playing bigger tournaments as a junior around that 15, 16 area, and then kind of had that realization of, I would really like to do this for a career. What would be my next critical step? And so started looking into the recruiting process of college golf, as most people, relayed me the message of good junior golfers always go to college to hone their skills, find a good coach that can help you grow. It's a critical time in your life. And so started looking into that recruiting process, and was very fortunate to meet a few guys down in that area that were part of the University of South Carolina golf team. And just through playing competitions with them, some tournaments with them, some friendly matches with them, they were very gracious enough to give my name to Coach Bill McDonald up here at South Carolina. And, next thing I knew, when I was a junior in high school, was able to take a visit, fell in love with the campus, fell in love with the coaching staff. They were great. I knew that they hosted an incredible schedule full of competition. And I really, after talking to my parents and whatnot, felt like that, just through the competition, the guys on the team, the campus, the facilities, I knew that if I wanted to make it to the next level, this was definitely a place that I should attend. And so shortly after that, I was able to commit and signed my national letter of intent in November of my senior year, and then started the fall of 2013. And college golf was just an incredible experience. So much so that I took 5 years instead of 4. Ended up redshirting my junior year. But, I learned so much just as a college golfer in the arena of golf, life, character, what it means to be a good student. And so, thankfully had a pretty successful career here at Carolina, and, just decided that I felt like my talent and my gifts were more so on the coaching side than the playing side. And obviously it was a very difficult decision to give up the game in the pursuit of professional golf. But, I felt like the next step was to get into the coaching side, just because it was such a rewarding experience to see how much I grew in college, how much Coach McDonald affected me in my entire life just in the short time that we knew each other, much like you do with your junior golfers, and much like you did with me when I was younger. Yeah. And so here we are today. Right after graduation, I got the job as the assistant coach, and just learning tons. And that's just a little minute or two overview of my golf history.
Well, that's a fantastic story, and you've come so far, and we're all proud of you here, obviously, in the area. I knew kind of early on with you where your dedication was intense. A lot of the younger players around the area wanted to play and be around you and learn from you and watch you and mimic you. You were kind of the local hero among a lot of the junior golfers, and it was kind of interesting to see how you developed and how you kind of moved yourself away from that environment a little bit on purpose, because, some of it was you wanted to be more serious in what you were doing. And, some of the other junior golfers were just kind of kicking it and having some fun. And Ben says, I want to make this really good. So I'm going to separate myself. You had a hard time doing that early on, I remember, separating yourself from that social environment that was kind of maybe a potential distraction, as it can be for a lot of juniors. But it was fascinating to me at your age how you were able to see way beyond the weekend, and a lot of kids are just kind of looking forward to the fun, and you really took it serious from early on. So, that's obviously going to be great for these college players coming into your program, having all the junior golf experience that you've had and the serious mindedness. You'll be able to give these kids a tremendous experience. I know they'll be grateful for it. Working with Coach McDonald, as you mentioned, he had a great influence on you as well, and kept you there and obviously gave you that opportunity. So it speaks well for him that he knows character and he knows great people when he gets the opportunity to meet with them. So kind of cool. Tell me a little bit about the recruiting process. You mentioned that there's been a lot of rules changes, and I know that's a topic of concern for players out there navigating their way into college golf. I work with a ton of kids, and it's always their question to me is, why are the coaches not calling me? I'm playing pretty good. I'm not getting any calls. Kind of give us some insight. What do we need to know about the rules and how that process works as they go forward?
Yeah, absolutely. And I got to be careful not to get down in the weeds here, because it can get a little thick at times. But there's a couple highlights that I would point out. Talking about kind of separating yourself and being serious just in the game of golf as a junior, I think that's a really critical step in the recruiting process, because you look on something like Junior Golf Scoreboard, it ranks juniors all the way up to, I think, the 4,000th ranking. So clearly there's a lot of junior golfers out there pursuing it, and so I think that dedication to separate yourself is very important. And then from a player's perspective, the best thing that you can do is just keep your head down and continue to play your game and play really good golf, because I promise you the coaches on the back end and from behind the desk, we do our research and we know, we recognize, we see who's going to kind of rise to that next level. So just in terms of from a player's perspective at a younger age, and I'm talking about like the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th grade, my biggest advice would be just to keep your head down and to continue to focus on what you need to do to get better. And, obviously play tournaments for experience, but from a coach's perspective, tournaments at 7th and 8th grade, if you shoot a bad score, it's not the worst thing in the world, as long as you can learn from your mistakes and continue to get better. I would say the recruiting process nowadays really starts when you're around the 9th, 10th grade area. And I say that because we've had a couple of pretty sizable rule changes, namely the official visits and unofficial visits to college campuses. So prior to last year, if you were in 7th, 8th, 9th grade, you were able to take a college visit. And when you're on a college visit, obviously you get to know the coaches, your parents get to know the coaches, you get to see the facilities. And what they were finding is, a 7th or 8th grader, they were going to these really big time programs and they were very talented and they began to commit earlier and earlier. Mm-hmm. And so, in my opinion, I think that can be dangerous from a couple of angles, because, when you're in 7th and 8th grade, you haven't grown into your full potential yet, and you may make an uneducated decision. So they placed a rule in place last year to where you can't visit until August 1st of your junior year. And so, obviously you're a little bit older, you're a little bit more seasoned to make that decision. And then in addition to that, it used to be where you could call coaches and they could answer and you could have a conversation at any point. But they couldn't call you back until, you were a junior. But this year, we can't take any phone calls. We can't give any phone calls. We can't send any text messages until June 15th of the year in between your sophomore and your junior year. So as you're a rising junior, that's when we can start to connect you or connect with you. So those two rules were put in place to slow the recruiting process down, which I'm certainly in favor of, because I want a kid that comes on campus and can make an informed decision, and I know what he's going to be like in a year or two. So just in terms of, how does a junior golfer go about that if he's in 8th, 9th, 10th grade? I would say try to play as many golf tournaments as you possibly can, whether they're local or national, because we are going to recognize you. And, from there, just be on the lookout for college coaches at tournaments. In addition to, it's always very helpful to us when we receive emails and update emails. The initial email to say, hey, Coach Dietrich, it's great to meet you, yada, yada, yada. And, this is who I am. This is my passion for the game of golf. This is who my instructor is. These are the tournaments I'm going to be playing. So that kind of gets us on gets you on our radar. However, we can't respond to those emails. So that's the challenging part, because, you feel like you're a little bit on an island. But if you pop up on our radar, we'll continue to watch you. The good thing is I can always contact coaches. I can always contact high school coaches. I can always contact people in your life other than your parents. Right. And so that's a lot of the work that we do from behind the desk. We make phone calls. We send emails. We try to get as much information on the player without actually meeting him as we possibly can before we invest the time into recruiting them. But, just to sum that up, as a young junior golfer, I would say, play your game, be dedicated, continue to learn, and shape your game from competition. And then as you get into that 8th, 9th, 10th grade range, start sending emails to programs. Do a lot of research on programs. There's nothing more that impresses a coach more to know what program they're emailing. I always grin when I get an email saying, hey, congratulations on winning the Hootie at Bulls Bay, 2 weeks ago. It looks like your seniors are really playing some great golf. That shows me that they've invested the time to look into the program, and it's not just a form email to those coaches. But, start sending emails. That puts you on our radar, and with upcoming tournaments, so we can keep an eye on you and then hopefully get out and recruit you. And then as soon as that June 15th of in between your sophomore and junior year occur, feel free to reach out to us, and we'll reach out to you. Phone call, letter. Sent a couple of letters the other day to some junior golfers, it's always a rewarding experience. But in a nutshell, the better you play, the easier it is to get recruited.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I've been to obviously a lot of junior golf tournaments with my juniors that I coach, and just sitting on a bench and observing, 75 young players on a putting green warming up for their tournament. It's interesting to watch how many are actually seriously working on something in their putting and how many of them are leaning on a putter chatting with their friend. One time I was sitting there with a college coach, and it was like 74 golfers leaning on a putter talking to their buddy, and one golfer actually working a putting drill trying to improve his putting. I thought it was kind of interesting. So the juniors don't realize who's watching and how much they can pay attention to those details, right?
Oh, yeah. Exactly. You can
pick up a lot watching that body language, can't you? Well, I think it's interesting too. And with that being said, as you travel out and you're watching these young players and you're recruiting, I think you just said you went recently to. Did you get down to Dothan this year and see any play at the Junior Masters? And
unfortunately, I didn't get to go to Dothan this year. The 15 to 18-year-olds are playing right now. We've got a couple commits in that field, but I was able to make it to the Grant Bennett in Florence, which it always hosts a pretty good field of South Carolina talent. So, schedule-wise, I seem to be all over the place each summer, and things pop up. But unfortunately, I wasn't able to make it to Dothan.
I got you. I had a young player play in it for his first time this year, as I was telling you on the phone. He was 9-year-old Grayson Balcom, and I want to send the congratulations out to him. His first round got him into the top 10 in his age group. He was the only 9-year-old on the top 10 after round 1. The rest of them were 10 years old, and Grayson shot 1 over par in his first round. And second round bit him a little bit. I think he finished the tournament 6 over and was in maybe 12th place or something like that. But just a great performance, and I'm sure next year will be a bigger, stronger, faster, wiser Grayson Balcom, and he reminds me of you a lot of his traits. He's a very serious player, so it's always fun to watch him grow. And the next thing I want to talk about too is with social media is a big part of our environment today. These kids, they like to get on social media, and is that something as a coach that you're looking at, a potential recruit, or you're looking at their social media posts and getting a lot of insight as to what kind of person they are from those posts?
Oh, no question. It always seems to me that social media bears all, and I think what's interesting is you get a kid and they are excited about the recruiting process, but they don't quite understand what goes out on social media sometimes.
Right.
And so you can certainly find out a lot about somebody via their social media posts. It's definitely something we look at. It can be a positive factor, but it also could be a negative factor. I think what's interesting too, to go back to the recruiting process, is there's very limited rules via social media. So I can follow and track pretty much anybody on social media I want, just in terms of age. Obviously can't correspond with them via social media, but whether it's Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, I can kind of keep an eye on them, what they're doing. But I think what's neat about social media is it bears, like I said, it bears all. So you kind of get a glimpse into their personal life, outside the golf course,
right?
Which can certainly be helpful just in determining, character, what they're like at home, maybe their family environment and things like that. But yeah, it's definitely a recruiting tool that is widely used among coaches.
Now, as a coach and a coaching staff, do you guys feel, a little bit more excited about a young recruit that contacts you directly, or would you rather that individual have a recruiting consultant contact you? Do you hear from a lot of consultants representing players, and how do you prefer to communicate with a player when you actually get to?
That's a great question, and I've seen just about everything in my short coaching career. I've seen everything from a recruiting consultant to a parent to a coach to a high school guidance counselor. And it is always good to have contact with somebody other than the player that can kind of reference the player, if you will, and just give a little bit of critique or influence from the outside. But there's nothing better to a coach than from getting contacted by a player directly.
Right.
And I say that for a couple of reasons, because to me, and even Coach McDonald, it shows ownership. I think it goes a long way with a coach when a young junior golfer takes the time to sit down and construct an email, to give a phone call, to do their research. I just think that's so valuable, because what you find when you get to college is, you're away from home, you're away from parents, you're away from coaches, and the responsibility level goes up drastically. And so if we see a player, that's in 9th, 10th grade, that's sitting down doing research, constructing his own email and emailing us, that shows me that he is incredibly responsible. He wants it, more so. We get a lot of emails from parents, which is great, because the parents obviously are invested in the career. But I just, for me personally, I think it goes a long way when a player sits down to do that. It just shows an extreme amount of ownership, which that goes a long way with programs like ours.
Yeah, I think initiative is important. I've told all my players, I said, well, a recruiting consultant is certainly going to advise you in their viewpoints of how the process works. They might give you some structure to an email. They might guide you in some ways, but the coach wants to hear from the player, and I feel like that's really big, and I've always advised my players the same. I said, it's fine to use a consultant, but don't let that consultant do the job for you. Reach out to that coach and introduce yourself, and learn how to put your hand in their hand when you see them at a tournament, and just say hello and introduce yourself. I mean, eye-to-eye contact and the old school handshake goes a long way too. It's simple stuff.
Extremely valuable. Extremely valuable.
Exactly. And I know players always get concerned about putting their tournament scores into their resume. Hey, I had a bad round, and I shot 70 and then I shot 79. And I said, well, that college coach, if he's interested in you, he understands that golf is a game of up and down, and you're not going to play great golf every time you tee it up. But they look at your ability to bounce back. They might see that round of 79, you had a quad on a hole, and then you birdied the next hole, and that shows a lot of resilience in a player, So it's your bounce back potential that they're looking at, not necessarily that one bad round in your resume, So.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I can't tell you how many times in college golf that's so important, because you'll see a high number, and then determining if that high number determines the rest of the round, that could potentially take the player out of accounting score. So even if you have a triple, you make 2-3 birdies coming in, we're back to even par. So that always helps the team score tremendously. Shows
that player's resiliency, and the game of golf is going to require that resiliency to play at a high level for sure. So, players are coming to you probably more and more educated than ever. I'm guessing they are very familiar with TrackMan data and Sam Putt Lab data, and you guys are helping them diagnose things from that new technology and information. How much of that do you guys use on a day-to-day basis there in your program? You have all the technologies at hand, I'm sure.
So yes, we certainly do, and we encourage the guys to use it but not rely on it. And so we have a couple TrackMans that circulate through our team. We have a couple putting aids, and at the end of the day, we do use them in practice. Coach uses them to teach off of. What we stress on our players is mainly that at the end of the day, it's about getting the ball in the hole, and how can we do that in obviously the fewest strokes possible. But what do we need to do to be able to do that? If it's to know our TrackMan numbers and to know why we're hitting it, from right to left too much, let's by all means, let's really focus in on that and, try to improve that. But, if our TrackMan numbers are good and we're around the greens and, we're hitting 12 greens around and we're not getting, 50% of them up and down, then, maybe we need to look at something else and work on some short game a little bit. But, as far as technology goes, we do use it, we encourage it, but we try to get them not to rely on it, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I think that's a critical thing to understand about any technology. It's simply a measurement, but it's a means to an end. And the game of golf is always going to be about putting it in the hole, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
I'm sure Jim Furyk's TrackMan numbers weren't necessarily as good as Brooks Koepka's on the driver when he shot 58. Jim Furyk's numbers probably didn't light the TrackMan up, but he shot 58, and that wins most every day. So
every day,
it's always about score. I love kids when they say, "Man," I said, you're more concerned about how far you hit it. I said, let's take a look at this scorecard over here. Where does it ask you for the distance any of your shots went? It's not a box on the scorecard, man. You're looking for something.
That's exactly right. You don't have to paint a picture.
Yeah, you're looking for the wrong number. It's not the number of yards that your shots travel. It's the number of strokes it took you to hold it. So I think it's fun. Kids love to hit it far, though, and they're hitting it farther than ever in today's world, aren't they? The golf courses that you guys are playing are 7,400, 7,500 yards on average, and gone are the days of driver wedge. So
yeah, certainly. We played actually our national championship was at the Blessings out in Arkansas, and they had the course. The course could play at a max of 7,900 yards. I think they shortened it up for us, and we played around 7,700 yards.
Shortened it up a little bit for you.
Short golf course.
It's crazy. Oh, my gosh. Fascinating. Well, when you have practice with your team, are you a coach that feels like practice for a team environment like that should be extremely structured, in that you have team drills, or are most of your practice sessions pretty much individually designed for the player and what their needs are at that moment in the week?
So I feel like I need to offer a pretty nuanced answer here. One, because when I took the job, one thing I realized is, and even coming to South Carolina, is we're dealing with very, very highly talented players, and they know what they need to do to get better. Obviously, they're in the position that they're in. And so, for a while, what Coach and I did this year in the fall semester is we were very hands off, and we let the guys do what they need to do. Maybe we had one or two challenges for them each practice, whether it would be a short game challenge or a putting challenge. But for the most part, it was very unstructured, and it was very autonomous for the player. Mm-hmm. So once we made it through the fall semester and we finished up our tournaments, we did a fall evaluation, and in the fall evaluation, we essentially asked, what did we do well and what do we need to improve on? And it was interesting. The one thing that kept coming up of what we needed to improve on was we needed more structure in practice. And so to Coach and I, it was interesting because, you've got some players that say, we want to practice on our own. We know what we need to do to get better. But then, you give them that time and then they're like, maybe we need some more structure. So I think there's a fine line just in a team practice because everybody's a little bit different. You got to know your players. But what we ended up landing on was we get a certain amount of hours per NCAA rules each week. So we do two major team practices on Monday and Wednesday morning, and they range from anywhere to 2 to 2.5, maybe 3 hours on a good day. And so what we do is we leave the players to themselves to design what they need to practice on. So whether it's, I need to hit on the TrackMan, or I need to work on 3 woods, or I need to work on fairway bunker shots, we let them do that. Mm-hmm. But I think what really helped us in the fall or in the spring, we had a really successful spring, and it was all about wedge play. And so what we found was when we created that competition among the team, they took it a little more serious. They went through their routine and they mimicked what they were going to do on the golf course. So what we did is we set up what we call a gauntlet. And so what it is, we've got 3 distinct greens at our practice facility. One's, more or less flat with a few bunkers surrounding. One's very long and suited for, bump and runs. And then the other one's a very bold green. And so what we do is we pick a green and we pick what kind of short game shots we want to work on. And we set up basically a 9-hole up and down competition. Mm-hmm. And so we'll go through this 9-hole up and down competition as a team, all 9 or 10 guys out there as a team, we pair up in twos and we go around. And usually I let the players set the goal of, hey, guys, we have to get 8 out of 9 up and down. We got to get 7 out of 9 up and down, depending on the difficulty. Mm-hmm. And then if that doesn't occur, we either do one or two things. We either have a punishment for those who don't finish it, whether it's, a lap around the facility or push-ups or whatever it is, or you can't leave the chipping green until you get 8 out of 9 up and down. And so I think what that does is it does a couple things. It provides competition among the team. It mimics actual play. It's more transfer practice than block practice. But what I loved about it is the guys were so invested this spring in that. And so what I found was you had a little bit of trash talk going on. You had them, pair up into teams of 2 and do combined score. And so the competition was just unbelievable. You had guys jumping around the greens when they made a putt and stuff like that. And it was just so awesome to see, buy-in. But so what we do in those 2 hours of practice, we usually set something up like that, 9 holes. And then, maybe I'll set up a putting drill or 2 and say, hey, I'll be over on the putting green after you guys finish the short game area. And I'll be there to watch and help with putting if you want it. But if not, do what you feel like you need to do to get better. So it's a little bit structured, but at the same time, they have the autonomy to do what they want.
Right. And it holds players accountable for actually accomplishing a goal before they can kind of move on. I think that's the trouble with the recreational golfers out there. They're practicing, probably 95% of the time just in a block environment, standing on the range, banging 7-irons at a, generic target off a level line. I go, that's not playing golf, man. How are you going to survive in a jungle if you lived your entire life in a cage? Yeah, so some of these things you say, and exactly just right. Like they don't get the whole process of becoming a great golfer, and they wonder why their game doesn't transfer from the range to the course. Say, well, it's 180 degrees opposite, But that's great. Yeah, definitely having more random practice and adding that competitive environment, I find, as you say, helps players transfer their skills, and that makes them great on tournament days. That's the way it's done. So when you're going down the rabbit hole of diagnosis, one thing I always try and get my players to do is to kind of journal whatever it is they're practicing and write it down. Or if they're tech guys, they might put it in the notes section of their phone or what have you. But I say here's 3 simple questions you ask yourself for every journal entry. The first question is when. You date it. When did you do it? Second question would be what. What did you do? What did you work on? What would you do, to try and add that competitive element to your practice and add that randomness to your practice? And then how would you improve it? How did you change it? How did you make improvements to whatever it is you were working on? So the questions are when, what, and how. And if you have a journal entry, it should kind of include all that information. And then over time, they're seeing their journaling and they're seeing their competitive practice. If they worked on 10-foot putts and they made, 4 out of 10 one day, 6 out of 10 the next, and 6 months later they're averaging 6 out of 10. I say, look where you've come. You used to average 3 out of 10. Now you're averaging 6 out of 10 from 10 feet. So it's, it builds that confidence from doing the work and seeing it in writing and seeing that improvement. I think that's a big deal for players. Would you agree with the journaling approach, or some players just aren't going to write it down? They just kind of wing it.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that because it's always great to look back at where you were from where you are right now. So I definitely do agree with that journal approach. 2 questions. It's funny you say 3 questions, and there's 2 questions that I usually ask our players after they play. And I actually have them written down right here on my computer, but it's what did I do well and why? And then what can I do better and how?
Yeah.
And so, what I found is even when I was a player, the first question you get asked when you put the flag in by your teammates, by your coaches, by your family is, well, what'd you shoot? And so what I think that does is it puts you in that results-oriented mindset, and it basically ties your worth to, okay, I'm this score for this day. And, if you have a bad round, that carries over into dinner, that carries over into the night, that carries maybe even over into the next day.
Sure.
And so what we tried to do is try to stay away from the the generic, hey, what'd you shoot? Oh, you shot 75. You need to go practice versus, hey, did you have fun today? Yeah. Okay, good. What did you do well? Why do you feel like you did well? And then what do we need to do to get better for tomorrow? And I think if I could say anything about our mantra for the spring, we won 3 times, but it wasn't, we didn't get caught up in, oh my gosh, we just won, we're getting better as a team. It was, what do we need to do to get better tomorrow? What do we need to do to get better before this next event? And I think asking ourselves those questions and kind of like, dialoguing about it, recording it, obviously, you mentioned before we were talking about stats, got a lot of stats, but, seeing where we came from, where we are now, where we're going, and it's what are the questions that I can ask to continue to get better? And I think you hit the nail on the head there with those 3 questions. Yeah. But that's definitely a way to improve as a golfer.
Well, it just seems as though the best players in the world are never satisfied with where they are. They always feel like there's something they can do to improve. And I tell my players, hey, if it's 1% better every day for 100 days in a row, how much better are you going to be? That's 100%, right?
That's exactly right.
Yeah, but you got to do it 100 days in a row. And that's the problem. Most people won't do it 100 days in a row. They skip because they're going to the beach and hanging with their friends or whatever. I said, look, man, it's a process. You got to stick to the process.
Total process.
A little bit better each day. Well, that's all fantastic. So with your program going forward, I know you had a couple seniors there out of the 10 players on your team, couple seniors. Any new recruits you can talk about already that have committed?
Yes, sir. About? We got 2 really good seniors that are coming in this year, so they'll be freshmen, and actually a couple of them are on campus this week for orientation. But we got Jack Wall from New Jersey, outstanding player, has played in a couple of U.S. Junior AMs, has won a few pretty big tournaments. I know he won the Med Open a while back. It's funny, most of our guys are from South Carolina and Georgia, so when we get somebody from New York or New Jersey, he's kind of deemed the international player.
He's going to have to fight for some territory there.
Exactly. And then we have a guy from Rock Hill coming in. His name's Nick Mayfield, and very talented, a ton of speed. So we're looking for, both of these guys we see are, long hitters. They're very sculpted with their short game, and really sky's the limit to both of them. And I think what's really cool about our program, though we're losing 3 seniors that started, we've got a lot of guys on the back end. And so I feel like even though we're replacing 3 critical people, we've got a lot of depth. And so, I was looking through our stats not too long ago, and I realized out of 10 players last year, 9 of them competed in a college golf event. Mm-hmm. So that and that was actually keeping the exact same lineup through the spring. So there was just a lot of depth in the fall. And so we're looking to draw on that depth. We've got Ryan Hall, who was an outstanding player freshman year. He was ranked inside the top 80 in the golf stat rankings after just 1 year of college golf. So looking good for him to return, and a few other critical players. We've got 2 juniors, well, now rising seniors, Caleb Prevost and Jamie Wilson, that were an intricate part of our lineup in the spring for our 3 victories. So all in all, I think we're going to be in really good shape for next year. And, I tell the guys all the time, you guys can be as good as you want to be because you're all talented enough. It's what we do in the small things and what we do on a day-to-day basis that's going to propel us to actually reach our goals on the back end of the schedule.
Yeah, I was looking at Ryan Hall's statistics, and 21 rounds, a stroke average of 71 is pretty smoking right there. He'd get it done.
He can get it done. He's a unique individual. Even though he was a freshman, he's got one of the best mindsets I've ever been around in college golf. It's a very determined mindset, and what's really interesting is he actually gets we kid around and joke with him a little bit about how much he practices, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So they'll joke of he'll be out at our facility at like 8 o'clock in the morning and he'll stay till 5 o'clock at night, and it's just we don't have enough balls for Ryan Hall. No, he's out here today. He's going to use all the practice tee up, but when you got teammates joking about how much you practice, you're doing the right thing.
Exactly. Wow. Sets a pretty hard bar for everybody else, doesn't it?
It certainly does, but it's been great for our team because a lot of times he'll drag the other guys out of bed, and he'll be like, we're going to go play 18 holes right now. And it's like, this is what we need.
That is what you need for sure. That's fantastic. Well, hopefully that's continual and contagious, and it leads to great things in the upcoming season. I know it will be exciting no matter what if you're involved. And, as we look forward to watching the team and watching you compete and watching your career continue to grow, we have to mention something really big in your life that actually just took place, though, is you got married. All these heartbroken girls around Conover here. Ben Dietrich is no longer on the table. It's congratulations, man.
Oh man, I appreciate it, and you're too kind in your assessment there. But I got married. Let's see, this Saturday it'll be 3 Saturdays ago, and it's been a great experience.
3 weeks in.
I joke with people, in the past probably 13 months. I graduated college. I got a job. I got engaged, bought a house, got married. So my 5-year plan, was squished into about 13 months.
Just took place in 6 months.
But, so it's been a crazy time of transition. Just a crazy season of life. But to do it with people that you love, it makes it all the more rewarding. And then furthermore to have a job that you can't wait to wake up and go to in the morning. I think it speaks a lot, but I just think it's so special. And, I can't tell you how, blessed I feel to have a beautiful wife at home for one, and then a job that I, pinch myself every day that I can't believe I get to do this. Although I joke with people and say, most days it's, I can't believe I'm getting paid to do this. And then other days it's like, I'm not getting paid nearly enough to do this.
That's right.
But just all in all, just a huge blessing to be a part of this program and, be able to get married in Columbia.
Well, now is your wife a golfer, and does she understand the game?
So she understands the game very well because she's a quick study, but she is not a golfer.
Gotcha.
What's interesting is she grew up literally on the 9th tee box of Florence Country Club.
Okay.
And she, her dad plays golf, brother plays golf, but she never really picked up the game. But what was amazing is, we started dating probably 3 years ago, and I would travel to tournaments, and she'd have the golf stat pulled up on her laptop, profusely hitting a refresh button to see how we're doing. And then, we made it to match play this year in the SEC championship, and she sheepishly told me, she's like, can you please explain match play to me? But, in all honesty, after 5 minutes of explaining, what dormy means and, how, you can go 3 up on a match with 3 to play and just the point system, like she picked it up immediately. And so,
sure.
We were playing that final round, and she was actually in Sea Island watching, and she's like, man, we really need some power on the back end of these matches to get a win over Auburn. Unfortunately, we didn't, but just to hear her talk about that was actually really cool because she's such a quick study about it.
Oh, that's good. Well, she's got a good teacher there. You can bring her along and keep her informed on all the golf lingo and explain, shanks and all that stuff. Hopefully you won't.
That's a cuss word around our house.
Get her exactly. Well, get her playing. How about your mom? Is your mom still playing a lot of tennis, or is she playing a little golf too? What's going on with?
Honestly, she's not. I wouldn't say she's playing either. They actually made a pretty big move. They're living up in Mooresville, North Carolina now. We ended up selling our house in Bluffton and moving away from South Carolina full time. With me being full time in Columbia now with a new wife, and then my brother got married last year around this time.
Okay.
So him and his wife live up in the Huntersville area, so they wanted to move closer to home. But she's still as active as ever, and she drags Pops out, and they go work out all the time. And
I'm sure, she keeps him.
They're killing it.
That's awesome. Mm-hmm. I have so many fond memories of your family when you guys lived here, and I remember one in particular experience. I guess your brother still flies a lot. And do you have a pilot's license as well at this point?
No, my brother does fly a lot, and everybody always seems to ask, your dad's a pilot, your brother's a pilot, are you ever going to get your pilot's license? And I'm like, I love to go up with them, but I'm not nearly smart enough to do that kind of stuff.
I hear you. Well, I'll never forget the time that your brother was flying you back. I think he might have been 18 at the time. You were probably 15 or 16. You were coming back from Pinehurst, played a junior tournament there. It might have been Donald Ross or something, but I'm talking to you on the phone. You said, yeah, we're flying back from the tournament here in a little bit. I'm like, who's flying with you? Well, it's just me and my brother. I'm like, what? Your brother's what, 18, and you're like 15, like and you guys are going to be on a plane by yourself? I was fascinated by that. And it's just it speaks to how mature you are and your family. I was like, wow. Not many 18-year-olds I'm putting on a plane to fly my 16-year-old son home from anywhere,
Anywhere.
No, exactly.
Yeah, looking back on that, it's like,
I wouldn't put my 18-year-old son in a car bringing somebody back and trust him, You guys are coming back in a plane, so that's awesome. Fantastic. Well, Ben, I tell you, it's my pleasure to have you on the show, and I thank you so much. Hopefully we can have you back on maybe here after you kick the season in and you kind of get some tournament victories under your belt. We'll have a lot more to talk about next time. I want to congratulate you on your recent marriage again and just tell you we're excited, man. We're excited for your team. The process is underway, and big things are on the horizon for you and your program down there at South Carolina.
Yes, sir. And, I can't thank you enough. I certainly wouldn't be sitting in the seat I'm sitting in without you and all that you did for me when I was just a young punk junior kid rolling on the scene. A lot of fundamental work, but it was certainly a life-changing event. And, I think that's the best part about being a coach is the influence you have in the lives of your students. We may not think it's very big, but I think in the end you can't really fully grasp how much of an impact you do have on people. So for that, obviously thank you. And I would love nothing more than to be back on the show with you guys.
Well, that'd be great. Yeah, anytime you want to come through town, I'll sit back. We'll pull out my old laptop and look at some of your 10 and 11-year-old swing videos if you want to check them out. I have them. So it'd be fun to do that and catch up over dinner or something, man. For sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Would love to.
Okay, that concludes today's show, and I'd like to thank my guest, Ben Dietrich, for being with us. Fantastic show, Ben, and I look forward to next time after a couple more wins from your program at the University of South Carolina. Thanks again, listeners. Tune in next time when we'll have some more exciting news in the game of golf. Have a great day.
You've been listening to The Mesh, an online media network of shows and programs ranging from business to arts, sports to entertainment, music to community. All programs are available on the website as well as through iTunes and YouTube. Check us out online at themesh.tv. Discover other network shows and give us feedback on what you just heard.